So here we are, getting very closely to the Jewish New Year,
Rosh HaShana.
Rosh HaShana. This year is going to be on September 22, and we're going to celebrate 5,786 year of the Jewish people.
Wow, that's a lot.
So according to the Jewish tradition, this is the time of the year where it's very important to wish what we want for the next coming year. So my first wish is the return of all the hostages at the end of this war.
Amen.
And looking forward for that, I thought that was crucial in this very crucial time of history to share our feelings with the rest of the world. This is why I thought about to start the new year with this podcast with you, Giordana.
From Tel Aviv.
From Tel Aviv. Because you are a very inspiring woman. I would never forget the first meeting we had, a coffee in Rothschild Boulevard. And what impressed me back then was for sure more than 10 years ago because I wasn't pregnant yet.
Right.
And my son now is 9, so it was a long time ago. Was that you really represent to me the amazing story of this country, the startup nation, especially for women. Women that here can be entrepreneurs, mothers, and many other things. And this is what I would like to share to the world with this podcast. But the question is, why doing this podcast now from Tel Aviv? Why, Jo?
So for the last 2 years, we've been living in a war that's been incredibly challenging on so many levels, physical, mental. And along with the war, we've all been witnessing an incredible new wave of a disgusting level of anti-Semitism around the world. And it's not just aimed at the Jews, at Israel, but it's also aimed at the Jews worldwide. And I feel that this new hatred that once was, anti-Semitism always changes. In the beginning, it was about religion, it was about race, and now it's about a nation. But I feel that this hatred is not aimed just at Israel in general or Jews. It's very personal. I feel me as an Israeli, I am a legitimate target for hatred and possibly violence. And I felt I have to do something about it. And in my little world, what I can do about it is tell a story, challenge their view about what they know about Israel, because we live in an amazing country, and I would really love to share stories with the world and open your mind a little and see what we have to offer to the world. And this is really what I want to do, why I want to share these stories. What about you? Why do you want to do this podcast?
Well, as we just say, these last 2 years were incredibly challenging. And the media, the international media, didn't represent enough what we were all going through. Also as a woman, while your husband or son or brother is trying to protect your country. Not only in Gaza, there are 7 fronts.
Yeah.
And it's a story that unfortunately started before October 7th. But we're not here to talk only about politics. We're here also to talk about everyday life, as I said, as women, as mother, as entrepreneurs. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about you, Giordana? Who is Giordana Grego?
Yes. So I'm Jewish. I was born from a Jewish family, and both parents in Rome, actually. And then we moved to Milan. I was raised as, a nice, good Jewish girl within the Jewish community. I had plenty of friends who weren't Jewish. I had the opportunity to live abroad for several periods of my life. And once I finished high school, I actually left Italy for London because I felt Milan, in a way, was a little bit too small, maybe provincial, especially 30 years ago. And after living in London, I lived in the States for a while, and then I decided to make Tel Aviv my home. Why? Because I'm a Zionist. I believe in the Zionist project. I believe the Jews should have their homeland, and I wanted to contribute. For me, Europe has always been a big Jewish cemetery, because if you look at the history, that's what it is. And I felt if I have to contribute something to this world, I wanted to do it in Israel. And I moved here. I had all kind of adventures career-wise. I worked for a while at the Embassy of Italy. I worked for a lobby company. I worked in finance. And in the last 10 years, I started my own company, my own business, offering concierge services to people coming to Israel. And that's it. That's me in a nutshell. And part-time, I'm also a painter and an actress. And what about you, Fiammetta? I would love our listeners to know a little bit more about you, about the various works and activities that you do, because I think it's very, very interesting.
Okay, so to make a very long story short, I was born and raised in Milano in a very secular environment. My father is technically Christian, my mother is technically Jew, but I was raised embracing all kind of religious tradition and I ended up as an atheist, if I should define myself.
But you celebrating Chris Muka when you were in Milan?
I was celebrating everything. I also have a kind of passion for Buddhism because of my love for ikebana, which are the Japanese way to arrange flowers. But the reason why eventually I ended up in Israel is because, first of all, I felt that this country could embrace all my identities as a Jew, as a Christian, as an atheist, but also because of my studies. I came here because of my PhD in anthropology, and for an anthropologist, Israel is an incredible experiment where Jew, Christian, Muslim, Druze, Circassian, the list is extremely long, live all together. They are all together part of the Israeli army. They are all together working in hospitals, in the Supreme Court. So for me, it was a dream to live here. And this is why also I wanted my son to born here and to attend school here. He's studying in a school where they study Hebrew and Arabic and English, and he has friends from all the religions. His best friend is Yusuf from an Arab village. And I think this is an amazing place where to live when there is no war. But October 7 arrived and things changed dramatically. Even if tomorrow morning the hostage will be back and this war will end, I think it will take years for us and for the Palestinians to recover. And this is why I think it's so important to share our story to the rest of the world. So Giordana, where you been? Where you been in October 7 and how this very specific date in history changed your life, your career, your being a mother? What has it changed on a physical level, on a mental level, on a everyday level?
So it has changed me profoundly, as I think it has changed every Israeli and possibly every Jew around the world, and every person who has some empathy. So on October 7th, I was in Italy on vacation with my family, and our flight back got canceled. So we ended up staying for almost a month in Milan. And it's funny because I never thought of leaving Israel. I had that thought just before October 7th because Israel was going through this judicial reform and we were this close to being in a civil war. But then October 7th happened. And I think all kind of ghosts from the past were coming back. Ghosts from the Shoah, the Holocaust. We sort of were raised with the idea that never again was really never again. That's what we were raised, like something horrible like the Holocaust will never happen. And Israel has always gone through wars. But the way this massacre happened and it was something different. We felt extremely vulnerable. We didn't understand why the army wasn't able to defend us. There were so many levels of fears that were unleashed. And it deeply changed me because I think I became much sadder, much more sad. And I also became and discovered new parts of me, like the incredible resilience and a capacity to deal with situations that I thought I would never be able to. So to give you an example, I think I discovered a lot of new activities or things that helped me cope with it. One of them was painting. So I never painted in my life. And then I just found myself basically trying to relax and just started scribbling. And I felt that it was like the first time I managed to calm myself down since October 7th. And that opened a whole new world for me. Another thing was, for example, volunteering, especially during the war in Iran in June, which was extremely traumatic for all of us. It sort of I felt the urge to do something. And the thing that made me feel the best was actually to go and volunteer and help give stuff basically to the people that just lost their homes. And as a mother, it's very hard. It's very hard to teach your kids how to be resilient and also to explain to them what's going on on TV. Like my youngest daughter was asking me, why are the people in Gaza living in tents? And, you explain to them there is a war and their homes has been destroyed and she was like heartbroken by it. And how do you explain it to them? It is horrible. The reality is horrible. How do you manage to explain war to children, especially a war that they feel every day? I mean, just yesterday we were running to the shelters again because of a missiles. I don't know how much this is being reported abroad, but basically we've been running to shelters for 2 years. So this is a little bit about my October 7th experience. I would like you to tell me also about yours before I start venturing in the startup nation and career-wise. So where were you on October 7th?
So I was at home in Tel Aviv. Funny enough, I just came back the day before from the opening a huge exhibition in Italy about Israeli art, because this is what I do in life. I'm a journalist, but I'm also an art curator. And few hours later, we found out that the cousin of my husband was missing in action because he was attending the Nova Music Festival. And only a few days later, we found out that it actually was being killed by Hamas. And actually that week, my husband was just going from our funeral to the other because many kids of his good friends were trying to defend the kibbutz during the attack, and some of them lost their life. But something that to me is very hard to explain, especially to the rest of the world, is that while I was working 24/7 as a journalist, I felt tremendously alone. Also because some of my best friends, including you, were not here. October 7, 2023 was a Jewish holiday, Simchat Torah, during Sukkot. And many Israeli like you were just in vacation. And you, Nadia, and Gaia, two other amazing Italian-Israeli women entrepreneurs that I would love to have with us in one of the next episodes, were all in Italy, stuck in Italy. There were no flights. And all of a sudden, I heard from you, I heard from Gaia that you were thinking about, you actually brought your kids temporary to the Jewish school. And I thought, they're not coming back. That month was the most horrible month of my life. I couldn't even imagine to survive here without you. So I would never forget. I would never forget our first meeting in Rothschild. I would never forget our first meeting when you came back.
Yeah.
We met at Tamati, the coffee place next to my house. You hugged me and I didn't feel alone anymore. And this is why also this podcast is so important to me, because few women in the last 2 years really kept me alive. So in a way, I'm also grateful to them. And I would love all of them share their story here as women, as entrepreneur, and also to describe the resilience that we had to develop in those last 2 years.
Yeah.
There is something that maybe we should explore because it's very connected to the cultural environment of the startup nation. It's a Yiddish word. It's called chutzpah.
Chutzpah
is another word that is very hard to explain, but I think is the secret word to understand the success of Israel as a startup nation, but also in terms of resilience. Maybe you can help me, Giordana.
Well, first of all, as a good Jewish girl from Milan, I was the exact opposite of being a chutzpah. Like for me, it was like a bad word. It meant like, being sort of arrogant and cocky, and that not what I was. Now I am. So I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I've always been an employee, always, do the things as I've been taught. And I think coming to Israel sort of helped me unleash a very wild part of myself. And basically, I was working as an employee somewhere. At one point, I had my third daughter, and I was like, let's just stop a second. And I looked around, and I saw there's all these amazing people, and lots of them women, who are starting businesses, startups, developing new technologies, and being mothers at the same time, and just going out there and doing things. And I was like, wait, I want to do that too. I actually decided that I wanted to build a business before I knew what the business was going to be. And I don't think this is something that I would have done had I stayed in Italy. I wouldn't have the courage to do it. But also I think just the setting is just so inviting to try and start to do new things. And I think the reasons are many, but I can think of two. One is that there is no fear of failure. Like if you hear other podcasts about the Israeli success who started, they tell you, people don't even invest in startups whose founders haven't failed at least once or twice or 3 or 10 times and burned millions of dollars. But failure is something that is just part of the process. It's not something you should be embarrassed about. It's not something people are going to judge you for. It's just part of the process. Just do it. And it doesn't really matter if it succeeds or not, because it's an experience and you're trying to do it and you're having there as entrepreneurial spirit. And I think the other reason, which is sad and happy at the same time, is sort of tomorrow is not confirmed. Tomorrow is not to be taken for granted. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And God knows we know this for the last 2 years. So do now what you want to do. Don't wait until tomorrow. Carpe diem. And it goes for starting new businesses, jumping from airplanes, doing things, trying new foods, or
doing a podcast.
So just do it, because life is extremely fragile. And this is why we're here. And Fiammetta, why you have a different sort of a career path. Mm-hmm. How did the Startup Nation change you? How did it affect and made the person that you are today?
So in a way, I'm not an entrepreneur as you are, but definitely the cultural environment of this Startup Nation was so inspiring me that it partly brought me here, not only out of Zionism, but also because I wanted to be free, not in terms of payroll. Technically, I'm a freelance for the two newspapers where I work, Il Foglio and Avvenire, and also as curator for the Jewish Museum of Lecce in Italy and for the Tel Aviv municipality in Tel Aviv. But the freedom that I'm talking about is the free of choice. I choose what I want to write about. I choose which artist I want to represent. And this feeling of freedom is something unique that I could never achieve in Italy and probably in Europe. And I think it's very related to the place where we live, the Middle East, for good and for bad. Because every day in Middle East is a challenge. We don't know what's going on. But we are also exposed to amazing stuff. Just to go back to the war of Iran, because of course during those 2 years of war we had several wars in between. While we were hiding in the shelters, I was also thinking about other women trying to hide in Tehran.
Yeah.
And as a journalist, as curator, was very it came immediately to my mind to try to connect with some Iranian women, and I thought that the easy way as a curator was to connect with the Iranian artists. And what surprised me that we start to talk to each other, and as I was scared for them, they were scared for me. And this was incredible, that in the middle of a war, while our government were trying to destroy each other, us as human beings could connect to each other. And this, to me, is such a incredible example of resilience.
Yeah,
that is one of the reasons why, despite everything, I'm still here and I want to be here. Is out of choice. Actually, Giordana, I would like to ask you, how comes that after this crazy 2 years of madness, you're still here. We could go back to Milano. We have a house there. We have another passport. But despite everything, we are here.
Yeah. It's a hard question because it is hard to live here. You know, we show this resilience, we show this strong face, but it is hard. We feel very isolated, we feel very scared. And it's very hard to deal also with, I think, with the damage and the death that we are doing to somebody else. Justified or not, it's just really heavy. And we have to deal with a lot of losses. And God knows we've been to too many funerals of people, of young people, that makes you think, especially when you have kids, like, is it the right choice to be here? What I can tell you that what really helps me here is, I said it before, but is volunteer, is to be involved in community projects and helping other people, because it makes me feel like I'm doing something for the good. And there is a sense of togetherness, of understanding that what's going on, it's bigger than yourself, and putting time into helping other people really makes it meaningful. And especially here during a war, if it's from, again, helping people that lost their homes or giving bloods, whatever makes me feel really, really better, not good, but better. And the other reason, which I guess is the most, it's more philosophical, is that I try to zoom out on Jewish history. And this war and this wave of anti-Semitism is nothing new. If you look at Jewish history, unfortunately, it's a history of persecutions, genocide attempts, with some interruptions of highlights, like, you know, the Renaissance or the Enlightenment. But basically, the Jews have always been hated around the world. If it was in Christians, in the Christian world, or in the Muslim world. And again, the hatred kind of changed. Initially, it was a hatred based on religion. Then it was a hatred based on race in the last century. Today, I feel it's a hatred based on a nation. Like, you know, every country, every nation has the right to have their own state, but us. Zoom out, you know, you see how tiny Israel is. It's like the size of New Jersey. And zoom out, see the Arab world. Like, it's obvious that we can find very easily a solution to this conflict, but there is not a clear understanding in the world of what's going on and the reasons of Israel. And so I just feel like this is, you know, the challenge of our days. And I don't think, you know, I would feel much safer being in Milan. I'm not sure everybody knows, but actually had a taste of what life would be in Milan, because on October 7th, we ended up staying there for months, as you said, and I put my kids in the Jewish school. And my kids were asking me, like, why is there police, army, and armed guards around a teeny tiny school of like 400 students? So even abroad, maybe in Asia is different, but, you know, it would be, you know, an amazing experience to live there, but, you know, it's not really an option. So if I were moving back to the US or to Europe or to the US, you'd have to deal with a lot of challenges based on your identity as a Jew or as an Israeli. And I feel like it's staying here, it's a battle worth fighting for, with all the challenges. So that's my take. What about you? It's a heavy question because it carries a lot of meaning. And if it was only for us, it would be one thing. But if it, you know, we're both mothers, and our choices have consequences for the people we love the most. So what about you? Why are you still here?
As you said before, I also, because of my background as an anthropologist, I always try to zoom out. And I see this conflict not only a conflict between Israel and Hamas, but part of a larger conflict that I personally, as a journalist, call World War III. Despite the rest of the world and the international media doesn't speak aloud about it, probably because it will bring to the crash of the financial market. But this is where we are. And I feel that I am fighting World War III.
Yeah.
And I decided to fight this war in my own country. And as we had to fight, our grandparents had to fight World War II to a better place, this is our challenge. But I want to try to be optimistic. I'm actually kind of pessimistic about what's going on in Europe and US. As you just said, I have never moved there. But as I said before, Middle East is actually a very challenging place where things are already happening. The Abraham Accord started in 2020, and they're moving on. I will not surprise if at the end this war will end, not because of the help of the Europe or US, but because of the help of the Arab countries. They're sick and tired of Hamas and all the radical Islam, and they want to live in peace like us. So, as I mentioned before, the relationship they already have with some Iranian women, I would love one day to host on our podcast maybe a woman from Saudi Arabia, from Emirates, from all the country of the Middle East that are looking forward for peace.
Yalla, inshallah. Yeah.
So, apropos, inshallah, Giordana, we're getting too close to the end of this first episode. And
I want more.
Well, I'm really looking forward to invite more amazing women like you here. And speaking about women, would you like